This year, Thomas Hutton celebrates 80 years, and while that history is built on projects and partnerships, it's really shaped by people. In this series, we're taking a closer look at what it means to work here, from career growth and development to the teams and resources that support our employees every day. Because building the next 80 years starts with investing in our people. So, as we look toward the next 80 years, one of the biggest questions right now facing every industry is how technology, especially AI, will shape the way we work. At Thomas Hutton, we know the conversation is already underway. Today, I am joined by Ben Jones, who leads our AI Strategic Task Force, and Matthew Roach, who is one of our heads of our task force, who is dealing with the back end, right? What are we calling you?
Business operations.
Biz ops. Okay,
We call it the front end.
No, and then I am handling the front of house, and we're missing Felipe today because he is somewhere dealing with some sort of AI initiative. Felipe Toledo, who heads up our tech ops. So you're helping lead our AI Strategic Task Force. So we're going to talk about how we approach AI thoughtfully, responsibly, and with our people in mind. So when you hear AI in the context of our industry, what does it actually mean for a firm like Thomas Hutton? And how did this idea for an AI Strategic Task Force come about?
So I think like all the conversations about AI have been going on, right? And one of the things we said was making sure we had dedicated resources and leads to focus on the different kind of business units within the business. So for and they're not the same, right? There's one side that's very technical, the side Felipe is running, and looking at kind of how AI can help us on the design side of engineering. And then there's the other part that honestly, in my opinion, is further along with the AI, which is helping with more of taking some tasks that typically would have been done, whether that's by a project manager or support teams, and automating that. And that's really been where we've seen the most movement with AI and the most advancements even within Thomas Hutton, because it takes tasks that nobody really wanted to do and really makes them seamless. Still puts the human in control, but gives you the data faster, easier, already organized. So whether that's contracts and proposals to just report writing, those kind of things is kind of where I'm seeing the most change. But the reason why we put the groups together was to focus for each group and really have dedicated people collecting information and then creating tools, or working with Matthew and the teams to create tools to address those needs.
So how have we been kickstarting some of these initiatives? Like, I know there were like beta testers or like even beta groups for those three different buckets that we had identified for front of house, the business ops side, and the technical side. So let's talk about that. Like, how did we come about in creating these beta groups and getting the feedback and all of that to kind of drive what the first initiatives would be?
So I'll let Matthew go through some of the kind of specifics, but like the goal was, like, first thing you got to do is come out with some tools that let all of the employees start using it to get comfortable with what AI is and what it isn't, right? And how you QA/QC it and what it's good for. And take away some of the fear factor of us taking our jobs, those kind of things, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But so what we tried to do is just make a list, which was where we started, a list of just tasks that we felt like AI was strong on, that people were doing now that AI could be beneficial. And then I'll let Matthew talk about some of those tools, because then coming up with the game plan to write those tools and release them. So I think, some of the good ones were whether it's Hermes. Yep. So talk some about that one.
Yeah, sure. So I think it's important to step back and make sure everyone knew what AI is and what it's not. And
what is an LLM?
Yeah, exactly. What's an LLM? How do you use it? What's prompting and prompt engineering and all these different strategies on how to use AI and what it means to you in your role. Because it's very different for every individual. It's very different for the company. AI is a very personal thing, whether you talk about it in your personal job role or as the company. It has to tailor towards you. You can't just go buy something off the street and start using it, because you don't know what you have. It runs off of your data. So you got to make sure you have good data and that you're using it in the right way, or else it's garbage in, garbage out, and you're just going to be wasting a lot of money. And so once we had those talks with everyone, then we kind of identified certain people who had a little bit more of the technical chops to see, kind of identify where in their roles AI could be useful. And so once we did that, we started some ideation and gathered together in our different groups just to kind of test the waters and see what ideas came about. After that, we noticed we had a ton of really good data out of some of these groups. One of the things identified was our intranet. We have all this amazing data from HR policies to marketing resources and it's help desk items and then all of our CAD tools. The lists go on and on of all these different pieces of data and things about Thomas Hutton were really useful, and people loved it, but they couldn't find anything because it was so much stuff. And so that's really where the low-hanging fruit came with what we call Hermes, is our SharePoint search, basically. And so you ask it a question, it has all this great data at its disposal, and it gives you an answer.
How did you come up with that name?
So it was actually Felipe and I were talking, and he came up with the idea to use Greek gods and goddesses as the name. And so, we kind of just started looking at what would be good for this use case. And Hermes is, he delivers information between the mortal world and the gods, and or I guess Olympus. And so that would seem like appropriate, delivering information to the end user. So that's how Hermes came up. And it's really, we're trying to see how things go and see what ideations happen and what comes out of it.
And even for one of the use cases that came from, which as they got through their kind of reviews, came from like new employee information, right? New employees are saying there's all this great data, I just don't know how to find it, right? So Hermes was a great solution to try to connect, especially, not that it doesn't benefit all employees, but especially new, when you don't know where the different organization is. Once you get used to it, you can kind of find it, but for them it was massive. So for onboarding new employees, that's a big step of just being able to get to exactly what you need really quickly.
Yeah, and I was going to mention that whole idea of it helps with the onboarding, just because like we had Mike Hughes earlier talk about TNH University and all the different recorded sessions and things like that, and the new briefs that's about to be launched, and trying to find that information. But yes, for us who've been with the company for so long, we take for granted that we kind of know where everything's stored and saved and things like that. So for a new employee coming in, this is definitely a huge feature for them to be able to like search for things that we already would kind of know the answer to. So
I think the next phase of especially that is with our THU system that Mike is kind of working up. And it's for those people who've been here a long time, gone through all these training sessions, and finding that one sentence on some technical training that they heard 6 months ago that they can't remember exactly where this piece of information is, but they know that they heard it. And so now trying to get those transcripts from those training classes in there. We talking with the different LMS CEO the other day, actually talking about using that and how to consume that kind of information.
So there's a lot of noise around AI right now. I don't know about your inboxes, but my email inbox is full of different AI emails on like what's happening right now, what's going on, what's in, what's out, what's real versus what's hype.
Well, I think especially with where we are in AI, because it like, at least for our actual use and availability, it's fairly new, right? So I for those of us that grew up and saw the transition that we had when the internet came out, right? Like it's a big transition. So at the beginning, I found, like, even with the internet, it was useful, but not as useful as it has become, right? You couldn't live without it now. I think same thing's true with AI, which is, a lot of the stuff right now, like, it's getting smarter, better, faster. So, like, I think a lot of the noise is, one, the things you can do today, right? And then a lot of discussion about where it'll be 5 years from now, that's an eternity with AI. So, what we've tried to focus on is what things can we deliver now, and then what things can we put in a long-term roadmap. I'll give an example of that. We were first meeting with the group, and we came up with automating proposal writing, right? So when we're doing a job, every job requires a proposal. So we started working with that plan, and we realized to get started, we didn't even need AI. We already had it. Tim Neri could do programming, and we could just do that. But the more we got into that can get us round one. Now, building on that with AI of what we can do even now and 6 months from now will be night and day, right? So coming up with kind of a roadmap of what they start off as and then what they can become with time, and just staying focused. You go to there's a lot of conferences, a lot of webinars, and going and listen to those and finding the ones that make sense for your business, and kind of staying and kind of the opposite, which is understanding which ones you don't need to worry about right now.
Yeah. I mean, there have been several webinars that Matthew and I have been like 15 minutes in. I'm like, this is a waste of time right now.
If I go to another webinar that they talk about where we're going and this pie in the sky thing, it'll waste of time. But yeah, I mean, it's identifying where you want to be and how do you get there, and then breaking it down into steps, and where does AI or other technology come in handy and can help you accomplish that, and you just keep building until you get there.
So when we first started with this whole AI journey at the office, I know we sent out an email just to kind of like a survey to get everyone's sentiment. And I remember in the beginning, the push was, don't think about AI. Like, keep AI out of it right now. The thing that we really want to know is what is a time-consuming task that is killing your productivity, because it's something that takes too much time out of your day that you repetitively do. So what were some of the things that were identified during that survey, and how are we addressing it?
So that survey, I guess some of the stuff was report writing, report reading, field observation reports, that kind of stuff.
Note taking. Proposals,
Yep.
out of that.
Yep. And so, it's the repetitive pieces of someone's job that are necessary, and Ben was mentioning this earlier, they're necessary to do, but, as an expert in your field, you're kind of wasting your time spending so much time doing that on these repetitive tasks. And so that's kind of what we focus on. And, we've gone through some of them. Some were automation, some were AI, if there's any kind of, difference there.
And I thought that was interesting, right? Like, understanding somebody's task and saying, oh, that's actually not AI. That's an automation. That's an automation thing.
It's all, it's kind of blurred now. It's all AI, kind of like everything's a Q-tip. Everything's a Kleenex. It's all AI.
Yeah. It's all ChatGPT.
Yeah, it's all ChatGPT, exactly. So, just we started, like we said, we know where we want to go, and just start knocking them off that list and breaking them down into what is possible and what is kind of future possible, and just start knocking them off the list.
And I think one of the benefits of that too was, we made this list of things we wanted to start accomplishing, and we started coming up with all these, and we're doing like beta tests just within, whether it's ChatGPT or whatever, to see kind of like, can it be accomplished with AI? I think that's when we decided too is, what we don't want is 15 different random tools out there in the world. And we started saying, okay, we've got to have kind of like a wrapper around this. And that's when Matthew went and focused on what would be good companies or products out there that we could, put these tools in, to where employees don't have to remember 15 different tools they can just go to a place and see the tools that are available to solve the different problems to make it, a little more streamlined.
So that, and I'm not spending $20 a month on it.
And that way we're not spending, $20 a
five
month per
different
tool,
tools.
per
Yeah.
employee. So we really kind of backed up right then and said, okay, let's figure this out to make sure we're writing the tools in the right sense of the employee's experience with using them. So we backed up and used that as our focus. Now we're back creating tools again, but with a little bit more thought into how they're arranged and how they're organized and how employees gain access to them. So that was something we learned just because we were like, this is a long list of things. If you end up with 100 different tools, you're going to need an AI to tell you which tool to use. So basically that's what the wrapper does.
But I think that's how Thomas Hutton works. I mean, even from 15, 20 years ago, we develop things that we want to use in a way we want to use them. Like I said, we don't go buy stuff off the shelf. Anyone can go buy software. Anyone can go get a subscription to ChatGPT or whatever. We like molding the technology to how we want to use it, and that same thing happened here. We identified what we wanted to do. We utilized our contacts in various places and just kind of looked to see how it fit, and just being thoughtful about it and not just throwing mud against the wall and seeing what sticks.
And I think I appreciate that too, because I've gone to conferences or professional organizations, and they'll ask like, "What do you use for your CRM system, or what do you use for that?" And I always giggle because I'm like, we had to create our own, because there was not, we do use a certain program, but we also have another we also we have a unicorn in-house that has helped create these programs that give us the data that we are looking for, that's not like
in a way we're looking
buried.
for it.
Yeah, exactly. In a software that we can't use.
And I think it's important, like even we're talking about AI too, is like, for what we're here today talking about, like we've been in business 80 years. We have a lot of great data, right? So even the benefit of the wrapper too is you can specify like, for outside learning, use, whether it's Claude or ChatGPT or whatever LLM you want to use. But you can also point it to your own data and say, for these types of things, we really want to maintain or have a tighter feel on the quality, right? So for this type of thing, only use our own data. And getting that organized, which Matthew and the team spent some time on, right? Like getting that organized so that that's efficiently done and effectively done. Was another job to do, and will be a job ongoing of keeping your data clean so that you can use your data for the stuff that needs to be real precise, and use the LLM stuff to more of give you opinions or comments or add if you're trying to turn that into some kind of write-up, is important.
So with AI and the incorporation of AI and we'll talk about some of the things that we're looking at, but right now you mentioned data. And so data is so key, right? Like if you want good output, you got to feed in good data. So do you see us having to change the way we're putting data into our systems?
So this actually came about with the field observation report and the proposal one we're looking at, or we're actually in the middle of creating now. There's our standards, and then there's the way people do things, and they don't always align. And we've learned that we have standards, and it was more for organization, but there was never really any incentive to follow the standards beyond someone being able to come in and easily jump into the flow. And now if we're creating these agents and these different AI tools, now there's a carrot. There's a carrot to following the standards. And so we discussed trying to have it back, kind of have it be able to read how things are being done now versus how our standards are set. And we decided not to do that because we don't want to encourage people and have this work with bad data. We want them to follow the standards. Put your contracts here, put your specs here. And so it looks for that there. If it doesn't find it, fine. It'll continue working. It just won't be that fully fledged report, and won't be as robust of a product or experience you will have. So identifying those standards and creating that carrot to follow those standards to get good data and get it in the right spot is very important. And
like a good example of that is like a lot of our standards were set up as we were coming into the, the world of working across offices. So technology had increased enough to where, whether I sat in Charleston, Nashville, Savannah, Columbia, Greenville, like wherever I was, I could look at the same data. And that's been around for a while now. But a lot of our standards were built around making sure that experience was good, right? So if I was in Greenville and helping out Savannah on a project, I could find the file locations. We used similar layering, all the things that go into make sure we can work on a project together. Consistency of what you need information to create a job number, and people be able to find what the job is in the future. So more archiving and finding things in the future. So a lot of our data storage was built around those concepts. The good news is we started that pretty early, so there were some standards. The other side of that too, though, especially for file storage, like Matthew was talking about, is like if I knew I wasn't working across offices, it was easy for me to go, well, that doesn't matter as much. Yeah. There was no big benefit, right? So, I don't need to be as thorough on my contracts, right? It's just my team working on it. I put the contracts there, but I've got all the other versions too. So I could kind of let the standards, and what we're finding is because of that, the future isn't, because it wasn't followed as precisely, the AI part can't tell the difference. Right. So, coming up with those standards, and then like Matthew said, is saying to people, if you do these things, the benefit will be your proposal writing, your field observation report, just asking questions in the future of, hey, I'm working on this project, here's my plans, here's my specs, here's the issue I'm seeing, can you give me some pointers of what I should look at? Like if you've followed that, you'll get all those benefits. Engineers, if there's an added benefit, they'll do it. Yeah. So educating on that part will be the next step.
Yeah. So what are some of the AI initiatives? And we've heard this at every single like AEC AI related industry, conference, webinar, whatever, is that our industry is way behind every other industry using AI. But like what initiatives are we using or that we're working on right now?
There's the low-hanging fruit of meeting notes, that kind of stuff. There's the obvious pieces of proposal writing. That's any kind of writing generation. That's LLMs are absolutely amazing at that, as long as you give it, again, the good data. I think Anthropic just released their report the other day that said AI was expected to have this massive impact on AEC industry, and so far it's had a very small impact. So I think a lot of that has been a result of reading plans, not being able to read a set of plans. And so, we're working with a group to actually have it read a set of our plans. And the differences between Thomas Hutton and any other organization, the set of plans is very it's not very standard from one organization to another. And so I think there's a lot of issue with that. And so having AI read that, it's going to be a personal thing. You're going to have to spend some time dictating what your standards are, how you draw things, and how you present it to the AI, and so that it can read it on a consistent basis.
And the good news for us on that, there can be different standards because of municipality-driven requirements, but our standards from line type, line weight, like those types of things, layer names, all those are very well done. So I think long-term we're going to do it. But I think, even for us, there's kind of still two components, right? There's I'll call it less technical. That doesn't mean that it's not technical, but less, and then there's true design technical. Our focus right now is on the less technical, and that doesn't mean that doesn't have some technical aspects. So even like what Matthew was talking about with reading plans, our focus on that now is more of, what's on my plans, right? Like just tell me what's on it, and then we're going to use that for more proposal creation, where you can double check it, but it's not trying to do design for you. It's trying to provide you the information that's available on the plans. if it does that and does it well, and once we get comfortable with that, then we can start talking about adding layers of other things it can do with those plans, QA, QC, reviews of the plans, look for missing things. But you start with the things where you can start implementing it into your workflow, but the QA, QC is easier to do, and you can start getting a better feel for the accuracy of what you're getting from the information. So that's kind of how we're starting on that one.
Yeah, because the immediate wins for the marketing department has been amazing, right?
And I was saying, RFP, RFQ,
Yeah.
response, that's huge.
Yeah.
And I think, and that's the important part of having a roadmap of saying, how can we start learning whether or not, how technically correct it is, and then start adding pieces on it, review that. Then add another piece on it, review that. So that you're not trying to jump to the end, right? You're layering this on, so it gives you time to absorb and do, especially when we move into the design part, which I think is a little ways off, is that part is non-negotiable. It has to be correct. So implementing that would be a slow process for us because we need to be correct. And to be honest, even on that one too, which is what Felipe's group is, some of those where it gets super technical may be third party, right? Maybe something where we're buying a product and watching what they're doing and understanding which of those fit within our workflow.
But it's important to have focus. I mean, that's kind of the point of these task force, because you can be jumping from shiny thing to shiny thing and you'll never create anything. And so having that focus from these groups and from the leadership is really key in having a good outcome.
And I think the reminder too, when we're talking about this, is when you make these lists, and again, it's another reason for kind of looking at the roadmap, is a lot of times people come up with these ideas and it's the end, right? And they don't want to start until they can have that fun. And the truth is, it's much better to try to say, let's solve the first task, right? And that saying of let's walk before we run is true. Let's keep building
Bite-sized chunks.
And if you do that, right, if you start that, then okay, you release the first tool in a couple of months. A year from now, it's going to be that much better.
Right.
But if you never
Or completely different.
right, or completely different. So it's better just to find something that is very helpful and start.
So I know there's some people who are hesitant about using it. They're nervous about it. They're scared. How are we addressing this?
So that actually came out, that survey you mentioned earlier, that I think it was about a 30% of the respondents didn't use AI because they were nervous or didn't really know how to use AI. And so in our first few training sessions, we had to make sure they knew, look, you're the experts in your field. You know what you're doing. We're just going to take that boring stuff, that repetitive stuff, and take that away from you, have it done automatically as much as we can. Your expertise is actually going to get higher because you're able to actually focus on your expertise going forward. And so, just hammering that message home over and over again that this isn't a replacement for anything. Someone still has to sign plans. Someone still has to design plans.
QA, QC still has to be done by a human.
Human, yeah.
And I do think, adding on to that, I do think, you can't still right now, for the human at the end, even when it's helping you write reports and do those things, even if it's using your own data, you still have QA, QC. Only you're going to know whether or not what you got was good, or the project manager for the projects. So, you've still got to do that because AI still will hallucinate, right? Which is just makes up stuff and promises you it's correct. Yeah. So you still have to do your part. I think once, as we add these tools in and keeping them simple, getting people comfortable with that part of it, Hermes is a great example of that, right? It's just kind of a useful thing that builds repetition over time, and you start trusting it more, then you'll start using it more.
Yeah. I was a beta tester for Hermes, and I actually really, really loved it. I was like, yes, especially trying to filter through a lot of the news posts and things like that, just trying to find, you knew something was written, but you couldn't find it because it's buried under years, so yeah.
But we have those sessions where I think once or twice a year we do with the it looked good on paper idea. And so I think that's where we, especially with the design side of things, that's where their expertise comes in, is okay, let's say, however many years from now, AI designs something. Well, we've designed stuff that looks good on paper, and it does not look good once you get it out there in the field. And so that's where their expertise comes in, is translating, what can be done on a sheet of paper versus what can be done out there in the real world.
So, what should our staff feel confident about as we start exploring all of these tools?
Well, our staff can feel confident that, a good idea can come from anywhere. So it's not like we do what I say, or we do what Ben says, or we do what Yuri or Felipe says. It's come to us with your ideas. Let's innovate together. And we've done that for years and years and years at Thomas Hutton. Latipult came from a water cooler conversation. I love that story. And so I think they can be assured that they're not going anywhere. We're here to help them do their jobs better, and come with your ideas. We'll take anything.
And I think the other thing they can take away is one, they'll be part of the process from start to finish, right? Or some group that's involved with it. And we're going to make sure the tool is adding a benefit, not removing, right? So it's going to make the job more efficient, make your tasks take some tasks off your plate that most of us probably didn't enjoy, but while still giving the human the ultimate say.
And I do love the fact that, we do ask, if somebody's hungry and curious and using AI to join one of these, to step in and join one of these task force groups that we have. And I think that's been super helpful. We've gotten lots of ideation ideas and things like that. So I think
it's done in a
we're
very
good.
thoughtful way. It's from every aspect of the company. It's how does it affect the end product? How does it affect the employee? How does it affect the company? Everything, it's done in a thoughtful way.
So what excites you most about where this could go? I know you have been excited because you stepping down from COO and now being vice chair.
Well, vice chair of the board.
I know. I did this last time too.
I forget sometimes too.
We were looking at each other. I was like, vice chair. But really, you're leading the strategy side of things of the company too. So you're now having the time to actually sit down and put your energies and focus into AI. So, yeah.
For me, a couple different realms for me that are most exciting. One, just from a personal level, there's not many of us, and again, I get there's a scary side too, right? I tend to focus less on that part, but more on how we can use it in the right way. But I look at it as there are very few times. I'm just sorry, it's almost at the end of my career that are will be transformational to our business. And AI will be transformational to our business, just like the internet was. Doesn't mean it's the end of the world or none of us have a job. I think it's the opposite, which we can talk about later. But but for me personally, with what AI can do, I think the idea of taking tasks off from project managers and other designers within the team where they still get the oversight of that information, but it takes those tasks away and makes it more or makes it more efficient for them.
Yeah.
Is huge.
Where they're reviewing
right?
instead of doing.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. And the reason for that is we're not, as the U.S. in total, we're not graduating enough civil engineers now. So even when I look at employment and the impacts of AI, before 10 years ago, I would have been worried for the company and the business and the industry, the fact that there is a certain amount of work to be done and we don't have the people skilled to do that. Enough people choosing STEM, enough people choosing civil engineering specifically, right? Because that's the profession we're in, to accomplish the things that are ahead of us. And how are we going to get this work done when we don't have the knowledge or the skill set or the number of people to achieve it? I think AI can help bridge that gap. So I think all the humans still end up with their roles. We can just meet the need now because of AI. So I'm excited for that. And then being part of building those tools that can take those tasks that make sense to aid the engineers in doing their work, that's exciting. On the other side, which is more the strategy, so more like in my role in Thomas Hutton's board, the idea of taking all of this data we have, right, like, and the data of the U.S. and say, where should Thomas Hutton look to grow? What services should we add? What are we doing effectively that we could build on? Who should be working with Mike Hughes on training? Like, what are tools, where are mistakes we're making that we could create more training programs? AI is going to be
building projections,
yeah. like modeling out, like those types of things that would have taken months or years, or to be honest, just was too bulky to ever get to. Now we can do. And that, like, so from a strategy perspective, I think AI is going to be a complete deal changer of understanding your strengths, your weaknesses, where you need to improve, where you need to, again, whether it's from training to growth to sustainability of the business for the long term, I think AI is going to make leaps and bounds changes in how we can accomplish that. And that's probably my number one is how impactful it will be in helping do that in a time frame that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's a game changer. There's no doubt about it. I think I'm excited about how we're going to handle it at Thomas Hutton. I enjoy building stuff here, and it's just fun because we don't shy away from new technology. It may not always work. We try to make it work, but at least we're trying, because most of the time it has worked. And it's fun to do this, and having the ideas that come from every single person at the company. We've got a great group of people here that are willing to chip in and willing to help out in any way they can, and that's whether it's from cleaning trucks on a Friday afternoon to coming up, sitting down and testing out Hermes, or whatever they need to be. They're willing to step in and step up and help us with it.
And even with the new technology, and I agree with what Matthew just said, like there are going to be, whether they're failures or missteps or whatever those things are, they're going to happen. It's a new technology. It's a new use. Making sure we have tripwires set up to where we don't do something that creates quality issues, like that's a big review. But the other is, you can't have true success without some failures, right? Because it teaches you what it's not good for, right? And that's as important. Like, AI isn't meant for everything. Right? So learning what AI, where it adds value, and use it for that. And if it doesn't add value, don't use it. And understanding where those lines are is important, because it is not a cure-all for everything. It's a cure-all for certain tasks and certain things right now. And that'll change with time too. And, Matthew, Felipe, you, me, I mean, we like geeking out and reading on those things. And the important that is having people dedicated to keeping up, because the technology, it'll be a lot different a year from now than it is today. So 5 years from now, it's completely different.
Yeah. Well, as somebody that sits on the strategic task force, I completely love the fact that we're empowered to experiment and empowered to play. We've sat on multiple calls with third parties that have been like, y'all are way ahead of many firms that we've talked to. And that is because of our culture of, being tech savvy and being able to do that, to tinker. Yes. So thank y'all so much for being on the show today to talk AI. Technology will continue to evolve, but at Thomas Hutton, the focus remains the same: supporting our people, strengthening our work, and continuing to deliver for our clients. And this is just one part of how we're building for the next 80 years.